Okay, so we have two kinds of artworks here. Lanny and I have known each other for 30 years. He was my sculpture teacher years ago. The thing I remember is he came over to the head that I was working on in clay, and he just wiped the smirk off his face, just like in high school. But he actually ripped the lips off, and I went, oh, God. So, you know, we've worked together for years, and Lanny's been my source of knowledge and understanding of artistic process for years. We have several publications together using his artworks and reception studies. What I would like to talk about here with Lanny is to get a sense for his approach to art, how he strategizes, what meaning is for him. And we have two very different kinds of works here. One comes out of, in a certain sense, sculptural abstractions, and the other is out of a series, was initiated by a series that had to do with artists in their studios. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I think that's probably this first. These, well actually I really don't want to talk about them individually at first. I'd rather talk about the relationship of both. Because these were a response to doing this. I did these, I've been doing these for a couple of years, 2 shows worth, which is a long time for me. I always change my, I'm constantly shifting my formal approaches, and my interests generally are similar in everything, but my, the way I represent it changes.
And the interest, here, how would you summarize the interest?
In this case, it was kind of a, I think these were a response to that. In one sense, the color. I've been working with such neutral color. My paintings of those, in, you know, there's a couple over there. And over here.
These figures here.
They're pretty drab. I mean, they're very middle tone, all neutral mid tones, and not a lot of color. Even though they're artist studios, there's not actually. In most of them, there really wasn't that much color.
Almost industrial.
It's a workspace. Industrial. There's other qualities that take over beyond the work, unless you just photograph the work, which is
so
what I was interested in.
And so what kind of qualities are taking over? More compositional qualities?
Well, these were about composition, but the thing is, they were very dark. There was not, it was all tonal in temperature. And then I wanted to just get away from that completely, so I started working with pure chroma, like really pretty much.
And the word chroma means?
The color itself, without diluting it or modulating it.
So again, right out of the tube, in that sense?
It's not exactly right out of the tube, pretty much. Some of it is. Yes, all the backgrounds here are pretty much out of the tube. The reds and the blues are just one color. But it's done in layers to get it flat in the way I want it. It took me a number of painting layers. And each time I painted, I repainted the whole painting. I had to go around all the edges. And I do it all pretty freehand. So it's a kind of,
well, it's an important point here. You know, when a person goes into a studio, goes to a museum, whatever, they see a finished work.
Right.
They can't really see the process and the layering that gets involved. So when you're saying I go around it again and again, what does that mean?
Oh, it means that when I had to, well, just practicality. If I have to paint the background again, then I have to go around every part of that shape. You know, the perimeter of it. So I'm re-experiencing that shape each time I do it.
You're re-experiencing the shape each time?
Yeah, like every time I go around it, I'm sort of feeling it. I'm feeling the proportions of it. And I always cut, every time I do it, I'm painting on top of one color to another, so I'm adjusting and responding to the edges in terms of
so even though this is...
I do some editing.
I understand, but even though this has a certain geometric quality or kind of geometric pieces put together, there's still an organic process.
Oh yeah,
in actually doing
because
it.
of the way I painted. Yeah.
Now explain
I could have done this. Like I thought, these could have just been photographs. I could have created a flat background of color, or I even could have done a computer afterwards and flattened all the colors out and done it photographically. And photographs, I actually responded to. I liked the photographs.
So that means you laid the
I'm not a
pieces out.
photographer, and I didn't want to get into computer work involved in that. But that was another option for these.
But well, hang on a second.
That was attractive to me.
So when you say photographically, you mean take your little pieces, because you have a whole bunch behind us here,
which I do.
and lay them out and photograph it.
Well, that's what I do for all of you.
So now you create
those things, those little installations in themselves, just photographed, or almost if I clean them up to the point where I needed to, which is just, it's not a process or an engagement that I wanted, even though the byproduct of that.
So let's go back to 1 second.
Might be attractive to me, but might not be as much as this. But the main thing is that the experience of getting there, of doing that, isn't that appealing to me. I'm the kind of, some artists don't mind torturing themselves. I've had enough of casting, torture, and making art. I'm looking for the fastest way to create what I want to create.
So you're taking your pieces, well, you got a whole wealth of pieces here.
I didn't finish my thought, but.
No, well,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
But all I want, you see, I'm listening to it, I'm saying, wait a second, people don't get a sense for what you're doing. So you're actually, these are what?
Yeah, it's like kids blocks. You know, it's funny, now I have a grandchild. I think my grandchild playing with blocks got me into this.
What is it? What kind of material is it?
Styrofoam.
It's just it's painted styrofoam.
That's right. So I cut these up on my bandsaw at the farm.
Cut them up on the bandsaw, yeah.
And I do it randomly, make random shapes. And I started making random shapes and playing with those. And then eventually I started making like this one, where I'm modulating it and trying to make some relationship.
So this is not a real thing. You fabricated this, or you're part of this.
It's like yeah, I fabricate. And then I play with them, and when I compose them, the act of composing is an important aspect of it.
So you got a whole pile of them over here.
Yes.
And you're picking them up and you're laying them down.
I lay them down in a configuration, and I'll take the camera, which is my phone camera, because I can immediately send it home. And I send them home at the end of the day, and I edit through them.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I photograph it on. I take a shot with my phone, and I'll look at that, and then I'll think about it, and maybe I'll make some adjustments to what I arranged there, and shoot it again. I'll make compositional adjustments.
Same day.
Yeah.
Same day. So you're laying the pieces out. You're looking at the photographic image, and making adjustments.
Making adjustments, but then but before I do that, I usually do a number of warm-ups where I'll do 3 or 4 arrangements. So I don't do just one arrangement. I have a certain amount of parts, and I play around trying to find different arrangements. Some of them are less successful, so you change them.
So you got a whole.
It's a process.
That's what I want to make clear to the viewers.
I like the randomness of cutting up a bunch of shapes that are really not thinking connected to that. When I start to control it is when I start editing. But before then, when I just throw them down there, I'm trying to do it in a very spontaneous way. I'm not doing it.
And what's guiding you?
It's just sort of feelings towards shapes.
Feelings towards shapes.
And then when I put a few things down, it'll suggest something, and I'll take another shape and try it.
And these are shapes that are colored already?
They're already colored. Again, the color is random. I just picked all my colors and I just started painting them randomly. I didn't want to think through and organize it, like, create something and then think, well, what should I paint that? And then paint. I want to have to find it. It's like a found thing. It brings in anywhere in the process. You're always going to have to control it and come up. As soon as you decide it's a work of art and it's finished, you've made your final edit. You've committed yourself. But before that, you're constantly editing and changing.
So let me just summarize. So you have a pile of shapes that you've created on the bandsaw that are foam cut and then painted.
And I paint them all.
And then you paint them all, and then when you lay them out on the floor, and you keep adding to it. When you lay them out on the floor, what do you lay on? Do you lay out 50?
Yes, yeah.
Random?
No, first of all, I have 2 cloths, one in the blue and one in the red. I use a black background cloth.
So those are background cloths.
Yeah, so I can see it. I can see those colors against the red as I do it. To feel the relationship.
So you're picking up a piece one at a time, or you're taking 2 or 3?
Yeah, and you play around.
And you're playing around.
Yeah.
And how long does it take to get to a configuration that you like?
I might spend. I take times like I'll be painting away, working on pieces, and then I'll take a break. And in that, maybe at the beginning or the end, I'll take a break in there where maybe at the end I'll take a segment and I'll just shoot for like half an hour.
No, hang on a second. So
arrange and shoot.
Okay, but you got a bunch of things going on at once. You're working on finishing a piece that you're painting.
Yeah.
And separately you're working on the configuration.
Yeah.
So you move back and forth.
Yeah, moving back and forth.
So
I'm not sure that's the only significance there is that it's just a way of breaking from one process to another. It gives you objectivity. Anything that gives you an objective, fresh look.
So fresh look.
It shows you a different perspective. It involves you in something else.
So is it which is this is the imaginative phase, and that's the more structured phase?
Yeah. In this one, you're not there. You're creating something. I mean, it's like a sculpture. I'm a sculptor. I've made lots of. I mean, this is like I've done this kind of thing in wood carving away. I've done it in plenty of scenes.
So this came out of the earlier wood.
Yeah, it's not new for me. Like you might look at this and say, well, why am I doing this when I'm doing that? And where does this come from?
Yeah.
Well, this has a very big connection to my art. even though it doesn't
because
look
it's got the
it doesn't look
sculptural.
like
It's got the sculptural aspect embedded in it.
Sculptural
and the color
aspect, and I went through a period of
aspect.
sculpture where I was working with wood and painting them,
Yeah.
and constructing them as these sort of folky figures.
Yeah.
And it sort of came up, these are like that, except in those I actually had to carve and form everything in the wood. I didn't assemble it. I did a lot of.
So now these.
Here I'm doing it really. It's just assemblage.
Okay,
And
so
it's
we see all these kind of faces.
Yeah.
What are the associations of these faces? What are they related to, in a sense?
You know, I sort of discover it myself. I look at them and there's something familiar about them. They feel kind of complete. I look at it and I see. Well, first of all, I look at the certain harmonies of how it's situated within the format and the composition of it and how it's laid out. And that's my first
The
study.
shapes. The
When I go
overall
to
piece and
select
the
them,
shapes.
I'm looking at composition. Because I'll see 5 where they'll be similar. I'll shoot
So
a number of them.
composition area-
You might see it just shift slightly within the frame. You think, oh, that's not significant. For me, that's big significance. I'll look for the one that's exactly where it should be. And I'll shoot it a number of ways. And same with lighting, like shooting it from both sides.
Okay, so hang on a second. So
I mean, there's many things I'm thinking about.
we're moving back and forth. You got the configuration on the floor,
Yeah.
but you also have pieces that you're moving ahead with painting. You're moving back and forth. Is the working on the floor a kind of recess? Like you take-
Yeah, it is a recess for that, but it's its own other.
No, it's its own other
Both,
thing.
so, I mean, they're recesses for each other.
So the reset. Okay, so you have the configuration on the floor.
Yeah.
You
I
work
spend
on
more
the
time
pieces-
painting than I do doing those.
Okay, more time painting.
Oh, way more. Yeah, you have to. The painting takes a lot longer.
When you start your day, you're starting with this, or you're starting with the painting.
Sometimes I'll start with this or I'll end with this.
Okay, so you got the configuration on the floor. You're working towards a composition that you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
You're taking photographs of it.
Yeah.
You're sending it to your computer.
Right.
Is it a one-day process? How long does it take between the starting to play with the configuration and saying
It takes a couple of days.
takes a couple of days? Okay, so then you have the configuration.
Right.
You're painting from the configuration, or you're painting from the photograph?
I'm painting from the photograph.
You're painting from the photograph.
I've looked at, I have gone back and looked, I mean, I don't really, for myself, when I paint, especially these, if I paint these observationally, or I paint them from my head, or I paint them from a photograph, or from observation,
Yeah.
anything, I'm gonna end up pretty much where I am with
But-
these.
but basically you're
I mean, I
working-
could go in a million directions, there's many ways I could have represented these.
So when you say a photograph, you mean the screen of your computer?
Yeah, the way I respond to it is perceptual painting. For me, painting it from the screen of my computer is like if I were painting it from life.
You see
Because
no difference.
they're both perceptual. It's different from mechanical processes where you're using reproduction. You've got either a measurement system or you're working with an actual projection and you're just following. It's basically paint by numbers to a degree, much more.
This is a
much
little more
difficult.
sketch-like?
This is in this.
What
These
word
I have
do
to
you
find the image constantly.
You're
You
finding
never
the
know.
image.
I feel I've lost it. There's no safe place. It's like there's other reproduction methods that I could use to do these, where you have a lot more safety and you know what you're going to get at the end.
So the safety and exploration. Some days you're working and it's just all cooking.
Yeah.
Or so you feel
Some
frustration.
days you think you lost it and you're not going to get it, and then you go back and then you found it.
So you're losing it and finding it, going
always.
back and forth.
There's a whole back and forth with that. So like, they look fairly systematic because they're very
In
much
the
the
end.
same. They look the same and I came up to the same place, but it took me, the way I get there isn't a straightforward
So
process.
each of these
And it's a very
pieces.
psychological process.
Okay, so now, when you say psychological, what do you mean?
In the sense that I don't just make it and it's done. There's a whole insecurity about being able to make it and find it and not know what it's going to be exactly until you get there.
So this is a found perceptual object in a
and
certain
it's,
sense.
and it's a difficult, long process. It's not an easy, fast.
So it's a day or 2
Although I'm
days.
getting better.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing is kind of a learning. Like I did these, I did those in a series, right? I did it, last time I showed them, there's a lot of them, all the same.
These are the artists, by those
The
are
artists in
the
the
artists in the
studio,
studios.
artists in the studio. And this
And
is,
what size
and this
is
is similar to them in that this is also a series. And that's a portrait, and these are portraits. You know, so there's a lot of similarity.
But anyone-
No, they're totally different.
That's right. The inexperienced
how I got
viewer
there with
looking
the-
at it will say, okay,
What's
these
the
guys,
relationship between these two? Well, there's lots of relationships for me.
for example.
But there weren't that many. But the pieces look obviously totally different.
And what are the similarities?
The similarities are their portraits. This
Yeah.
is a portrait of the artist. Their similarities is there's a lot of little. This is like a puzzle with lots of little pieces. these paintings, there's so many little parts to it. I pick a room or a space where there's lots of things in it on a micro. Like a little table can have a bunch of things. Then there's all big things around. There's all kinds of spaces with lots of things in different scales.
So that's one of the things they share in common.
For me, that's how I think.
That's how I know. You're the artist. Yeah. So there are spaces with things in them, whether they're the lived space of an artist.
Well, this one's even more interesting because here I've created. If you look at these, there's no sense of background as a surface. These are lying on those flat surfaces. The whole configuration of the face is connected to the plane it's sitting on, yet the plane is visible, yet invisible. It's there, it's a very strong color, it has a great real materiality and presence, but it's not airy, spacey like that.
Well, because
it's sort of like a surface, but it isn't. It's almost as if there's two-dimensional space. Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's sitting in a two-dimensional space, like black, dark matter.
There's a notion of the Ganzfeld where everything just sort of goes same. Now,
so these are all conforming to it. It's like gravity. Everything falls towards.
But for me, as an outsider,
it is gravity.
I go here and I take a look at this guy over here,
right.
And it's
that was a unique one.
It's floating. That's what it sort of is.
Yeah, no, they are floating.
They're all floating.
But they also, if you look at them, if you really look carefully, you'll see that they are sitting on a plane. They're all drawn. The geometry of them sitting on that plane is fairly accurate.
Consistent.
It's fairly consistent. They are sitting. If I just played around with that surface, I can make you see that not as space. I can easily make you feel that as a two-dimensional surface. I didn't do that on purpose. There's shadows, cast shadows, highlights on parts of the surface. Just treating it more painterly. There's a whole other way I could have made that material feel like it was right there, the way it really was. Instead, I chose to leave it ambiguous, as if it's also space.
So it could both either way. It can either be floating or it can be sitting on that flat surface.
I pushed it more floaty, you're right. I made it more floaty.
Again,
to make it more off.
I mean, particularly with this blue guy over here.
But the reason why he's more floaty is that the pieces, and all the other ones I kept all basically around the grid. I'm playing around with them, I'm moving them around, but this is what I did with my big abstract collage work, that really work I did about 15 years ago. Remember? They were very abstract, but they were built with little bits of photography and paint. But, wait, what was I saying?
You were building up spaces. We're talking about how we're reaching back to that kind of stuff. We were talking about this guy and how he's floating. Working with the pieces.
So there was a grid. We're working with a grid structure. Now that grid, and I break it up, of course. I play around with the grid, but the grid was always there, even when it's sort of.
So by grid you mean you got lines, you got columns, you got lines going both ways, and it's there and it's fixed.
But this one, the grid, I took this actually happened when I started moving the piece. I had already photographed it in a grid structure, and I started moving it, and it started to distort, and I thought, wow, I like that distortion. It almost looks like it's really turning in space.
Yeah, it looks like he's turning.
It looks like it's turning in space, and it was a really neat distortion, and it just happened by accident. Again, that's what I meant by you don't plan things, things emerge. You sort of find.
So you're sensitive to opportunity.
Now I can't. I went back and I tried to do that again, and it was really hard to do. I couldn't do it. I had to discover it in that particular configuration.
So you have the experience.
Maybe I could figure out a way or learn a way to orchestrate those kinds of happenings, but it happened with this one. It just all came together.
Spontaneously. Because you lifted it up and you moved it?
And that's the only one that I had that happen with. The other ones I always designed them within that grid or that two-dimensional plane. Here I twisted it around.
Now what do you
I'm
call
still going
this?
to try doing more.
I mean, one of the things you were saying to me
more of those.
is I would see an individual painting and you said, no, I'm going to show them as a group like this. So
first of all, this piece only works in multiplicity. It has to
what
be
multiplicity means a bunch of individual works together.
This room, before I started this wall was covered in them.
So how many?
Went all the way around.
How many of these have you got?
I have 30 panels.
You have 30 of them.
And I can do more.
And when you do an exhibit
I'm going to show them as
for a show, it'll be all of them together.
All of them together. And there's going to be, I'm doing at the farm, I'm making heads like the ones I'm doing here, but they're going to be in wood, more finished, more texture. It won't look like the styrofoam. There'll be something more on top of that because of the fact that they're
wood,
beautiful wood. And metal. I'm using metal in them too. And I'm assembling them on the floor. And in the gallery, they're going to be them. I'm going to assemble them coming out. So this is going to come down like this.
What's the effect?
Just a couple, like maybe 3 of them.
What's the effect for the viewer?
Well, for me, it's like taking these on the two-dimensional plane, looking at them here. I was going to bring the actual heads and repeat them onto the floor anyway. I want you to see how they
flow
emerge. Here's my source, and this is where it ended up as. But I didn't want to do it in a direct way like that. By doing the wood, by not having a background color, by having it not just those, but something with a different qualitative making aspect to it, craft, just to transform them a bit. So I'm not exactly doing that.
Mm-hmm. So it gives you a sense of the material.
I'm giving you the suggestion of it, but I'm not being pedantic about it or obvious about it.
Mm-hmm. But it's also a very interesting juxtaposition.
I think it might be. Again, it's experimental right now. I'm doing the other ones, I'm doing the ground ones at the farm on the floor there, and these are here. So I'm not going to bring them back and forth.
That's interesting concept.
So when I get one of those finished, I'm still working on it this weekend. I'm going to work on it. When I get one of those finished, I'll bring it here and look at it.
So what is the effect of having them all together as opposed to showing
why
them
the
individually?
multiplicity? The multiplicity, the fact is, the whole point of these for me is that each of these heads is different. They're a different character, they're a different personality. So you'll see, and the difference, the fact that they're all different becomes more interesting the more there is.
Now, what do you mean by personality?
Well, they're each kind of a character. To me, they all have.
So they have a cartoon potential in a sense?
Oh, they are cartoonish.
They are cartoonish.
Only in the sense that they're abstract, they're hard, flat abstractions, very symbolic kind of representation.
So they're hard, flat.
Which is more, tends to be more within the comic tradition.
Okay, but they're very, they have a certain mechanical quality.
Yeah, so I saw them as robots initially.
You saw them as robots.
The idea was that sort of, I think I was going to call the piece Ghost in the Machine.
Ghost in the Machine?
What we're doing is, the same way that artists started doing portraiture, long ago we were doing representations of ourselves, almost trying to create another self, right? To create this uber self or whatever.
It's like a self-portrait in a sense?
All self-portrait. Human beings were driven to represent each other, themselves.
One second, represent each other and themselves.
And themselves. But to create life, to make it, and then the artist became, very expert at making it seem very lifelike, more realistic, more
and these guys,
rather than just symbolic. And these are kind of like, now we're trying to make human beings that are representations not just of ourselves, but mechanically and as intelligent being, right? They're artificial aspects or representations of us, but that are really of us.
So would you say there's an ironic quality here? There's
so as soon as you do that, if you took a machine and you actually gave it intelligence, my mind is, would it be one intelligence, or would there be, if there's a number of
would they all be characters?
Would they all be
and they look at each other and say, he's weird.
It's like Hal on the computer. You have a character. Always, and movies have already explored that, the fact that every machine or every robot, from data, they all have a character. We think of them as personalities. Do we project that, or is that inherent in anything that we create like that? Well, that's what this is kind of about for me. That's what I'm playing.
So it's homogeneous because they're all robot-like, but at the same time, each one's different, each with different characters.
This one's sort of like feminine up there with the curvature underneath. Feels a bit more female. These feel like they're very male. Most of them I realize.
It's like very pompadour, right? They're very slim.
Like this one's a little bit female, maybe.
I know, but the hairstyle is, very 40s, 50s, with a lot of Brill cream in it.
Well, it's just the shapes I was playing. That was fun. I don't know where I'm going to go. I'd like to continue this so that I could make a really large installation. Again, I think the more there are, the more the individuality of each one is sort of significant.
When you do this, obvious. Do you have an emotional?
But there's also kind of like the more differences. Like when you're designing something, there's a design tension where you have a certain amount of unity. You have to achieve a unity of something. But if there's too much diversity, too much differences, you're too distracted. There's nothing holding together. Too much noise, and you can't really unify. But that noise, when it's all those differences, when they become repeated enough, take on overall quality. They become unified. And it happens on a visual level. There's many ways that happens.
So the multiple representations
and that's what
foster this.
The more of them I make, the more compositionally, as this is an artwork and a piece I'm doing, the more than there are, the more that harmony emerges within the piece. Doesn't quite, and I've known it, because right now it doesn't feel right to me. I know it feels better when I get those other 3 panels in over here, that other 6 here. It just changes the whole quality.
Do you have an emotional response to this, or it's mostly intellectual?
It's emotional and both.
And in what way emotional?
again, for me, each one of them is kind of a character.
So that's how you experience it as a character?
They're kind of expressive characters. And some of them are characters I'm discovering because I'm just finding them and creating them, and then I'm noticing them. Like this guy here, I really like, as he's sort of odd from the others. He's like less human in a way, but really and there's a kind of vulnerability to him. Maybe because he's teetering on that little piece there, and and the parts that go together, they really don't mean anything. They don't make any sense. Yet they, in the end, I feel there is a cohesion to them. I just like that quality in that piece, and also the fragility. The kind of, it's almost like skeletal.
So every one of them. Do you think little kids can look at this and sort of turn it into cartoon?
I'm really interested in seeing how kids relate to
this.
They are childlike, and again, as I say, it's kind of ironic that I started doing these just when I have a grandchild now, and I'm playing with them with blocks again, like I did with my daughter. I've always had a real penchant as a kid to play with blocks, like kids' blocks. I always loved them. So, and I'm always making things with them.
So there's this adult response to it.
It's kind of imaginary.
The robots and this and that, but there's also at the same time, little kids can have a completely different relationship with it. Zero intellectual, but maybe see them as cartoon characters.
Maybe. I'm curious to see what they think. Anyways, I kind of find them, I don't really, again, it's like when I did that series of the pedestrian series where I abstracted figures and made them almost as viewers viewing them from a distance. I did those pieces and I never really enjoyed the process of doing it. They were actually no more successful critically, but they're the ones that were the least interesting for myself, and yet I was driven to do
because the figures were so detached from the
whole
spaces.
thing was detached. The whole
super
experience.
Detached, very detached.
It was the most abstract thing I did, I think, and I didn't like that.
But you had figures in them at the same time.
I had figures in them, but I treated
but they
them.
were floating.
They were photographic mostly.
Yeah.
And I didn't. So I was just shooting them, but. So I didn't engage with
those are the figures I'm not going into the meat grinder where they go in and the emotion goes in.
I like what I did there, but these are a different story. These I wanted to. Again, that harmony that I was looking for.
So
diversity. Remember, I did little pixels, little pieces, and I put them together.
Little photographic pixels,
like that, like the one over there. It's like that. Again, that's kind of like what I'm doing here, and I'm trying to put the whole. Plan piece, putting all these pieces together so visually they cohere if they get large enough.
So what you're saying,
but they're all individual.
What you're saying is the little micro element. Can I take this off the wall?
Yeah.
So I can put it in front of the camera. So what you're saying, in a sense, is that what you're doing here with the micro elements, these are what cut out.
These are actually, this is all photography. The color in this is photography, and this is paint back here. I'm playing back and forth between pieces of photography and paint.
Okay, so you got pieces constructed.
Taking the place for each other.
Okay, so what is the relationship aesthetically between this stylistic gesture and those guys? Because you're saying
it's the grid.
The grid.
The grid, little pixelated things. Even the pieces, the fact that I'm taking these little blocks and playing with them. These are blocks that I'm building the image with.
So in both cases,
you're building with little blocks of color. Here are the three-dimensional shapes. They're the two-dimensional pieces.
I've learned a lot in the psychology, as you know, of doing art from our conversations over the last several decades. But the point is that interplay between narrative and formalism. That you can be working with your formalism, because that you're doing here, but take a look in the back, and we've got the cartoon aspect, and then they're all together, and the robot commentary on the real world. Right. So out of the formalism comes this big, their social narrative or social criticism. Here, you got somebody's world, so it's narrative at the front end, but you're really exploring the space and the formalist issues and color relations. Right. It's always a trade-off.
Well, a trade-off or just the dance. They need each other. They're good together.
Now, here's a funny kind of question to end.
But also the other thing is, in all my work, one theme for me in the work, big thing, is that I'm always looking at the relationship of abstraction to representation. I like representation. I like the way things look, but I'm always looking at the different ways, the abstract ways that we can break it down. And I never go. I have done pure abstract work.
And abstract.
It's never satisfying.
What does abstract mean here?
I mean abstract as in non-objective, where there's no representation embedded.
But aspects of abstraction have to do with shapes and colors. There are many aspects of abstraction in how you work it.
Right.
You're not just dealing with the thing itself.
It's a complicated thing. It's not simple. I mean, historically went through a period of simplifying these things to which was great, and allowing people to engage with them as separate sort of worlds. The world I'm choosing is one where there's a tension between the abstract qualities and the representational qualities. And the place where I do that, where you might think I do at least, even in these, where it's very realistic, I'm very engaged in the compositional aspects, which are very formal.
So you do the tension between the narrative aspects and the formal aspects.
Are always a big play
always
in
a
my
big
work
play
for me. That's a big important relationship.
Do you feel...
And art historically, my research and all my interests in art history have been around those lines.
Do you feel that, it sounds strange, do you feel a need to paint? Do you feel a need, like a certain kind of, how does it drive you?
Oh, it's a huge pleasure.
I
love painting. I mean, there's artists, the tortured art, a lot of artists say they hate painting or it's horrible, and yet they do it all the time, but I don't relate to it like that. I mean, there's a whole psychology to how you relate to your work. Maybe it reveals a lot about who you are, but I love painting.
Well, we talk about
I enjoy the whole process. I don't go through angsty. I get insecure, I don't worry, sometimes I've gone through bad periods, but generally in making a piece, no, it's a pretty joyous.
It's a kind of a problem, and you get the pleasure of solving
engagement.
it. It's joyous engagement, but you have a different kind of problem that's posed to you, and it's the pleasures of solving it.
Yeah, I guess it's problem
and
solving.
And the found object aspect.
And it's not the kind of problem solving that's sort of linear, where there's a real solution or there's even a real, system to get there. You can reinvent the system and the problems to solve as you go along. It's about the process, really.
It's about the process.
It's all about the process. Those things are great. I like those things there, having them there, but it's about the process.
That's it.